the man with an opinion on all things sports. This is The Meltdown with Vince Thompson.
Welcome back to The Meltdown. I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, CEO of Melt, and we have got a great meltdown for you today. But before that, you can always follow me at Vinny Inc., VINNY-INC, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Hit me up on LinkedIn. You know I'll hit you back. But we got a great one to unpack today. Speaking of the great one, Nick Saban, is he college football's billion-dollar man? The GOAT? After Monday night, I don't think anybody is questioning that. Let's talk about it for a minute. Obviously, they slayed the SEC in the most unusual year ever. An SEC-only conference schedule. They go undefeated. They demolish the Fighting Irish, which I was back at 012 in Miami when they did the same thing to them, 012, 013 as well. And then the Ohio State Buckeyes completely neutered them in Hard Rock. And arguably, if Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, doesn't get hurt, they may have tagged him with 70. Ratings are down. Why? Lots of reasons. I think the Monday night time slot needs to be challenged. I think the 8 o'clock game time needs to be challenged because it's actually not 8 at the kickoff. It's about 8:20, 30, or 40. ESPN did a great job with the pregame, I thought. It was interesting. Tebow's comments on Sark didn't ring true. Sark called a hell of a game. The hologram with Coach Corso with AT&T was fascinating. But we'll have to unpack this a little bit as we go forward. But Coach Saban, I mean, what can you say? I've spent a lot of time down in that facility. I've spent a lot of time with the people involved with that facility. Coach Bill Battle, former AD, one of my mentors. We spent a lot of time working down there with Coca-Cola, obviously with Aflac and Coach Saban. And when you walk into that building, it really feels like an NFL complex. So you can only imagine an 18-year-old kid walking in there. You walk in, Coach Malmore's rings are displayed. Then you take a left. All the covers of Sports Illustrated that Alabama kids have been on, which Joe Namath, Richard Todd, Scott Hunter, the King Henry, whoever. Then you get to the big room with the wall of all the former current NFL players on there, and it's easy to see why they're able to continue to secure these recruiting classes. But what's amazing is the consistency of it. Because at the end of the day, you can't forget these are 18-year-old kids. But what he's done with what they call the process, the record, 7 total national championships, 1 at LSU, 9 SEC championships. Believe it or not, Alabama did not have a Heisman winner until Coach Saban gets to the campus, and now he's had 3. Think about that. 3 since he's been there in he got in 07. 9 SEC championships, 33 first-round NFL picks, probably 6 this year. As we said, the 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Last season, not sure what it is this year, probably more, 56 total NFL players. But more than that, he has shown the value of his leadership. So it's got to be just more than about coaching. And we're going to talk about the process. We're going to talk about the way the players play as a team, the way that several of these kids came back this year when they really didn't have to. They could have made their money last year in the NFL. So he's earning north of $10 million a year. His exponential value to the exposure of the state of Alabama, the exposure of the University of Alabama, the economic development of the state of Alabama, the value of the ESPN contracts, the coaching tree is mind-boggling. How he rehabs these coaches. I mean, it's really truly unbelievable. His leadership this year in getting the SEC to actually play, the leadership when we had a lot of social unrest hit. Clearly, his leadership when Greg Sankey faced a lot of stiff winds this summer to make this season happen, and just the quality of the kids and you know how they flip the ball casually back to the ref when they score. I mean, and those kids play every down to the last minute. So we focus on the football, but the leadership and the outcome is just far greater than that. We could spend the rest of the day talking about the coaching tree. You know, he and Belichick, twin brothers. It's been well documented. Discipline, community, ambassadors of school, winning on and off the field. Look at some of the reclamation projects. The Sark, Lane Kiffin, Butch Jones. I mean, does my guy Malzahn show up down there? I highly doubt that. You know, is Bill O'Brien coming from the Texans? Is Adam Gase coming from the Jets? It's really mind-boggling, and the list goes on and on and on. I'll never forget I was down there several years ago, and this was literally the week after Alabama had lost to Ohio State in the semifinal, I think, of the 2015 game. 2015. And I'm walking through the facility, and Lane Kiffin is in a room by himself breaking down the film of the game. And it was the Saturday after. And there was a huge basketball game going on campus and all that kind of stuff. And he's in there breaking down film, and I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, they didn't even take they didn't even take a week off. And so you just knew then that commitment, that leadership was instilled. And we'll see this for a very, very long time, the impacts of the Saban coaching tree. To his credit, Nick was way out in front with his players at the University of Alabama. And as we know, the University of Alabama has a lot of history with this, with George Wallace standing in the doorway way back in the early 60s. That's where they wound up having the press conference. I mean, Coach Saban showed that leadership. Obviously, the state of Alabama has historically been very conservative against this, but he's always focused on the right thing and his kids. And you could see that thread through the season. Style of play, as we've talked about it. Think about Jalen Waddle and Alex. It's not Alex Leatherwood. Who's the kid? The center. Anyway, think about the fact these kids get hurt, and they wanted to be on that field for the national championship. And so they could have gone pro this year. Think about how many student athletes chose to opt out of their bowl games. Not one opted out for the University of Alabama. Leadership in the SEC, obviously, Coach Saban was out front. He knew these kids wanted to play. Greg Sankey out front. Don't forget those winds blew really hard from the press, the Big Ten, Commissioner Warren. We talked about him laying the egg several times. Look at the development of Mac Jones. Look at the development of Devontae Smith. I mean, but again, accomplishments on the field and off the field. So let's talk about sort of his perceived value. Here's my take. We know Disney, ABC, ESPN, and others, Fox and CBS, invest billions of dollars in college football. We know those billions of dollars have driven these salaries up. We know they've driven the buyouts up. We know it's forcing the hand on name, image, and likeness and paying the student athletes. We're going to get into that a lot and unpack that a lot in 2021. Big announcements coming. You see here the big deals that ESPN and Disney are paying these conferences. But I would argue, and I would love to hear feedback on this, I think Coach Saban and the Alabama program are maybe worth anywhere from 20 to 40% of the total value of these deals. You heard that. Billions of dollars, 20 to 40% of the value of the deals. Now, I'll probably get some pushback and feedback on that, but arguably, Alabama is the number one brand right now. You could put, Michigan's down, Texas is down, Ohio State's a great brand. What Brian Kelly's done at Notre Dame is pretty amazing. But I would tell you that Nick Saban is probably worth 20 to 40% of the value of the money that's being poured in right now. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we just see ESPN just made another $3 billion commitment to the SEC. Why? Obviously, we got great emerging coaches. Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee is a Saban disciple. Kirby Smart at Georgia is a Saban disciple. We could go on and on and on and on. Not to mention the $4 billion that Disney is paying the SEC for the SEC network. So the SEC alone is receiving $7 billion from the Disney Corporation. And I would argue that Nick Saban is 20 to 40% of that value. So where does that put it? 20% of $7 billion, 1.4. 40% of $7 billion, 2.8. That's pretty high cotton, as we say. And this is going to be pretty amazing to see this transition over the next couple of years from CBS, which I believe will lead Coach Saban staying at Alabama for another 3 to 5 years. He's 69. He's healthy. Miss Terry, what he does, we didn't even mention it here. We got to mention it here. Nick's kids is unbelievable. They were on the front lines when the tornado hit back in 2010. They go to Mass every morning. They contribute to a lot of charities in that community that really nobody ever hears about. So, but let's talk about what is value to University of Alabama. Because if you think about it, every time the University of Alabama is on television for a football game, that's essentially a 3 to 4 hour commercial in prime time for the University of Alabama. So think about this. During the broadcast Monday night for the Natty Championship, ABC got $1 million per 30-second spot. Think about that. $1 million per spot. Super Bowl's $5.5 million per spot, but $1 million a spot. So let's say 60 minutes times 4, 240 minutes times 30 is 720 30-second spots. Millions of dollars in exposure for the state and for the university. So multiply that since he's been at the University of Alabama, and that exposure value alone is in the billions. So think about this. In 2007, incoming freshman class, 407,000 students. Now, students who scored higher than 30 jumped from 13 to 41%. Students had a GPA of 4 higher jumped from 17 to 34. The construction on the campus. I got to spend some quality time with Coach Paul Bear Bryant's son, Mr. Bryant, several years ago. Mr. Bryant's focus prior to Nick and during Nick is to make the University of Alabama a global leader in education. And those were the words he repeated to me in our meeting. And so you really can't value it. And I've spoken a lot at the University of Alabama to a lot of students. I've sponsored major career seminars in the north end of the stadium. And every time I speak at Alabama, I'll say, well, where are you from? Are you out of state or Alabama? And more than 60% of those students will raise their hand from out of state. Then I anecdotally say, well, why did you come to the University of Alabama, for goodness sakes? You're from Philadelphia. You're from California. Oh, Nick Saban. Anecdotally, you hear that all the time. I may pitch that as an ad campaign to the University of Alabama. I'll get back with you on that one. He's 69. How much longer? But he's in great shape. He loves what he's doing. I mean, he really, really seemed very emotional about this team this year. It was really, really sweet and what they had overcome. You see those images. He loves to be at Lake Burton with the kids up there. He plays Augusta a couple of times a year, loves that. Probably could make $10 to $15 million a year in the ESPN booth or game day. Probably could make 10 to 15 to 20 million a year in the NFL. But I think he's going to be around a while. It wouldn't be that far fetched to see if he could hit double digits in national championships, which makes it harder for everybody in the SEC, particularly my guys at Auburn across the state. But we'll see what Coach Harsin does. He's bringing in some good energy, bringing in some good spirit, and we'll see what happens there. But in closing, Coach Nick Saban is the billion-dollar man for college football. So don't forget, the new book is out. Bill, brand new on Amazon.com. We're getting tremendous feedback from everybody. So that's it for this week's Meltdown. I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, and CEO, and we'll see you next week.
You've just listened to The Meltdown. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram @MeltATL. And follow Vince @VinnyInc. And on LinkedIn as Vince Thompson.